The ruins of New Avalon stretched endlessly under the crimson sky, its once proud towers now twisted metal reaching toward nothing. Commander Sarah Chen picked her way through the debris, her plasma rifle humming with barely contained energy. The war had been raging for 3 decades and humanity was losing. Dragons had returned to the galaxy not as myths, but as living weapons of mass destruction. Each one stood nearly 50 meters tall, their scales deflecting most human weaponry, their breath capable of melting through battleship hulls. They had come from the void between stars, awakened by humanity's expansion into their ancient territory. Sarah's boots crunched on crystallized sand where dragonfire had turned the street to glass. Her squad moved behind her in perfect formation, but she could feel their fear. They had lost Jakarta last month, Sydney 3 weeks ago. Earth's colonies were falling one by one and the dragon swarm seemed endless. "Contact ahead," whispered Sergeant Rodriguez through the comm. "Single heat signature, but it's huge." Sarah raised her fist and the squad froze. Through her scope, she could see the massive form curled around something in the center of what used to be the city's main plaza. This dragon was different from the others. Its scales shimmered with an opalescent quality, and it moved with a grace that spoke of ancient intelligence. "Ma'am?" Rodriguez's voice was tight with confusion. "The signature, it's protecting something." Sarah adjusted her scope's magnification and felt her breath catch. Nestled against the dragon's massive chest was something small and fragile. Another dragon, but this one was tiny, no larger than a human child. Its scales were translucent, almost ethereal, and it made soft chirping sounds as it nuzzled against its protector. The larger dragon's head turned toward their position, and Sarah found herself staring into eyes that held the weight of eons. This wasn't the mindless rage they had faced from other dragons. This creature was ancient, wise, and desperate. Through her helmet's translation matrix, words formed in her mind. The technology was new, developed from captured dragon neural patterns, and hearing it work for the first time was unsettling. "Human warriors." The voice resonated with the power of avalanches. "I am Thalorian, last of the Elder Council. You see before you, Astra, the final child of our race." Sarah's finger hesitated on her trigger. Every instinct screamed at her to fire, to eliminate the threat. But something in the dragon's posture spoke of surrender rather than aggression. "Your kind has fought mine with courage," Thalorian continued, "but you do not understand what you face. We did not come to conquer. We came fleeing something far worse." The translation matrix struggled with concepts beyond human language, filling Sarah's mind with images of vast darkness between stars, of worlds consumed by something that devoured light itself. "The Void Hunters drove us from our ancestral homes," Thalorian explained. "We sought refuge in territories we thought empty, not knowing your species had already claimed them. Our attacks on your worlds were born of desperation, not malice." Rodriguez shifted nervously behind cover. "Commander, this could be a trap." Sarah held up a hand for silence. The dragon's massive head lowered until it was level with her position, though she remained hidden behind the rubble. "I offer you knowledge, human commander. The Void Hunters approach this sector. They will arrive within 1 solar cycle. Your weapons that barely scratch our scales will be as ineffective as spears against them. Together we might survive. Apart, both our races face extinction." The small dragon child stirred, opening eyes that sparkled like captured starlight. It looked directly at Sarah's hiding place and made a sound that somehow conveyed curiosity rather than fear. "Astra is the last of our young," Thalorian said, following the child's gaze. "She carries within her genetic memory the accumulated knowledge of our species. She could teach your kind technologies beyond your current understanding. But she's also a child innocent of the war between us." Sarah's mind raced. The dragon spoke of cooperation, but how could humanity trust a species that had killed billions? Yet the child dragon's presence changed everything. It was impossible to look at the small creature and see only an enemy. "Why should we believe you?" Sarah called out, finally revealing her position. Thalorian's massive form shifted, and Sarah realized the dragon was positioning itself to shield the child from potential gunfire. "Because, Commander Chen, you have already proven that humanity possesses something we lost long ago." "What's that?" "Hope." The dragon's voice carried infinite sadness. "My kind became focused solely on survival. We forgot how to dream of better futures. Your species fights impossible odds and still believes in tomorrow. That is why you might succeed where we failed." The small dragon began to glow softly, its scales pulsing with gentle light. Sarah felt warmth in her mind, and suddenly she could sense the child's emotions directly. Fear, loneliness, but also wonder at seeing humans for the first time. "She likes you," Thalorian observed with what might have been amusement. Dragons choose their bonds instinctively. "Astra has never shown such interest in another being." Sarah lowered her weapon slightly. "What exactly are you proposing?" "An alliance. Your technological adaptability, combined with our ancient knowledge, your courage joined with our power. The Void Hunters consume entire civilizations, but perhaps together we can forge something new, something capable of standing against the darkness." The child dragon chirped again and took a tentative step toward Sarah's position. Thalorian tensed but didn't intervene. "If I agree to hear you out," Sarah said carefully, "what guarantee do I have that this isn't an elaborate trap?" In response, Thalorian lowered his great head to the ground in what could only be interpreted as a bow. "I place myself and my child at your mercy, human commander. Do with us what you will." The gesture was so unexpected, so completely contrary to everything Sarah knew about dragon behavior, that she found herself stepping into the open. Her squad's protests filled her calm, but she ignored them. The child dragon bounded toward her with the enthusiasm of any young creature meeting someone new. It stopped just out of reach, head tilted in curiosity. Sarah realized she stood at a crossroads that would determine not just her own fate, but the future of both species. The war had brought nothing but destruction. Perhaps it was time to try something else. She holstered her weapon and extended her hand toward the dragon child. The dragon child's touch was electric. The moment Astra's scaled snout made contact with Sarah's palm, visions flooded her mind. Cities that spanned entire moons, technologies that bent space itself, and always lurking at the edges of memory, something vast and hungry moving between the stars. "The bond has formed," Thalorian's voice carried surprise. "This has not happened between our species in over 1,000 years." Sarah staggered as information poured through the connection. She saw dragon history unfold like pages in a book. Their civilization had once spanned dozens of galaxies, built on harmony between technology and natural power. They had been explorers, scientists, artists. The savage creatures humanity had fought were refugees driven mad by loss and desperation. "Show me these Void Hunters," Sarah managed to say through the overwhelming flow of knowledge. The child dragon's eyes dimmed with ancient fear, and new images filled Sarah's mind. Things that looked like living shadows given form, capable of consuming not just matter and energy but hope itself. They moved through space in ships that defied physics, leaving behind systems stripped of all life, all light, all possibility. "They follow the psychic resonance of advancing civilizations," Thalorian explained. "Your species' rapid expansion, your quantum communications, your growing psionic potential, all of this calls to them like a beacon." Rodriguez and the rest of Sarah's squad maintained their positions, weapons trained on the massive dragon, but she could sense their confusion through the comm chatter. This was not how any of them had expected this mission to proceed. "Commander?" Rodriguez's voice was tense. "We need to report this to High Command." Sarah nodded, still reeling from the connection with Astra. "Patch me through to General Morrison. Priority Alpha." The communication took several minutes to establish, bouncing through military satellites and encrypted channels. When Morrison's weathered face appeared on Sarah's helmet display, his expression was grim. "Chen, what's your status? We lost contact with your squad for over an hour." "Sir, I need you to listen carefully. Everything we thought we knew about this war is wrong." Sarah quickly explained the situation, watching Morrison's expression shift from skepticism to alarm as she relayed what she had learned. In the background, she could see other officers gathering around the general's position. "You're telling me these dragons are refugees?" Morrison's voice carried disbelief. "They've killed billions of our people, Chen, and we've killed millions of theirs, sir. But there's something worse coming. Something that will make our war look like a minor disagreement." Astra pressed closer to Sarah, her small form radiating warmth and trust. Through their bond, Sarah could feel the child's confusion at the hatred between their species. To Astra, the concept of war was alien and frightening. "I need proof, Commander," Morrison said finally. "The Council will never authorize negotiations based on the word of our enemies." Thalorian's massive head turned toward the communication device. "General Morrison, I will provide proof, but know that time grows short." My scouts report Void Hunter advance ships entering the system's outer boundaries. Sarah's blood ran cold. How long do we have? Perhaps 3 of your days before their main fleet arrives. 4 at most. Morrison's face went pale. Their main fleet? How many ships are we talking about? Not ships as you understand them, Thalorian replied. The Void Hunters are a collective consciousness that inhabits structures the size of small moons. They don't conquer. They consume. Everything. They leave behind systems devoid of matter, energy, even basic atomic structure. Sarah felt Astra's fear spike through their connection. The child had never seen a Void Hunter attack, but her genetic memory carried the trauma of her entire species. Show them, Sarah whispered to the dragon child. Astra's eyes began to glow, and suddenly the air above them shimmered. A 3-dimensional projection formed, showing a solar system that looked almost familiar. Sarah realized with shock that it was an exact replica of Earth's system, but empty. No planets, no sun, just void where everything should have been. This was the Draconan home system, Thalorian explained. 5 billion years of civilization, gone in a matter of days. The projection shifted, showing massive shadow forms moving through space, each one dwarfing anything humanity had ever built. They moved with purpose, surrounding worlds and somehow drawing everything into themselves. Morrison was speechless for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. How do we fight something like that? Alone you cannot, Thalorian admitted. But your species possesses something unique. You adapt faster than any race we have encountered. Your technology evolves at an unprecedented rate. Given dragon knowledge and power sources, you might create weapons capable of harming them. Sarah felt a surge of information through her bond with Astra. Technical specifications for energy systems beyond human understanding. Weapon designs that use the fundamental forces of the universe itself. It was overwhelming, but also incredibly precise. I'm uploading data to your systems now, Sarah told Morrison. The child is sharing technological specifications through our connection. Impossible, one of Morrison's advisors protested. Our systems are completely incompatible with dragon technology. As if responding to the challenge, Astra chirped softly, and Sarah's communication device began displaying readouts in perfect human mathematical notation. Energy output calculations that made fusion reactors look like candles, defensive systems that could bend space-time itself. My God, Morrison breathed. If even half of this is accurate, it's all accurate, Sarah confirmed. But there's a catch. The technologies require a bond between human and dragon to function. They can't be operated by either species alone. This revelation sent shockwaves through the command center. Sarah could hear heated discussions in the background as Morrison consulted with his staff. The dragons are offering us a partnership, Sarah continued. Their knowledge and power combined with our adaptability and manufacturing capability. But it means accepting former enemies as allies. Thalorian's voice carried ancient wisdom. Your species excels at innovation under pressure. Dragons are masters of energy manipulation and have millennia of combat experience. The Void Hunters have never faced such a combination. Astra suddenly tensed in Sarah's arms, her scales flickering with alarm. Through their bond, Sarah felt a wave of terror so intense it nearly knocked her unconscious. What is it? She gasped. Thalorian's massive form went rigid. They're here. The advanced scouts. Astra can sense them entering the outer system. Morrison's face appeared on the display again, now surrounded by chaos as alarms began blaring in the command center. Chen, we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies beyond Pluto. Whatever's coming, it's big. Sarah looked down at the dragon child in her arms, then up at Thalorian's ancient eyes. How long do we have to decide? The decision has already been made, Thalorian said solemnly. Your bond with Astra has sealed our fates together. Now we must see if our combined strength is enough to face the darkness. Through the neural link, Sarah felt Astra's determination growing stronger. The child dragon was afraid, but she was also ready to fight for her new friend and the promise of a future neither species could achieve alone. The emergency session of the United Earth Council convened aboard the orbital fortress Prometheus, humanity's largest military installation. Sarah stood before the assembled leaders of Earth's remaining colonies. Astra perched on her shoulder like some impossible familiar. The dragon child had grown slightly since their bonding, now the size of a house cat, her opalescent scales shifting colors with her emotions. General Morrison presented the tactical situation with clinical precision. Long-range sensors confirm 3 massive objects entering the system. Each one is approximately 8,000 kilometers in diameter. They're moving at significant fractions of light speed despite their size. Counselor Elena Vasquez leaned forward, her weathered face skeptical. "And you're asking us to trust dragons? The same species that turned Mars into a molten wasteland?" Tellurian's voice echoed through the chamber's speakers, transmitted from his position on the planet's surface. Security protocols prevented bringing a full-sized dragon aboard the station, but his mental link with Astra allowed for communication. "Counselor Vasquez, your Mars colonies were established in ancient dragon burial grounds. My people reacted with the fury of bereaved parents. We have both committed atrocities born of misunderstanding." Sarah felt Astra's distress through their bond. The child dragon was overwhelmed by the intense emotions filling the chamber, fear and anger mixing with desperate hope. "The point is," Sarah interjected, "we're past the luxury of holding grudges. Show them what the scouts found." The central hologram activated, displaying footage from humanity's most advanced reconnaissance drones. The images were grainy and distorted, as if reality itself bent around the approaching objects. What they showed defied comprehension. The Void Hunter scouts weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were living wounds in spacetime, dark masses that seemed to absorb light, matter, and meaning itself. Where they passed, space became emptier than vacuum, stripped even of quantum fluctuations. "Our drones lasted exactly 17 seconds before being consumed," Morrison reported. "We lost contact with the outer monitoring station 6 hours ago." Counselor Zhang's voice was barely above a whisper. "How do we fight something like that?" Sarah stepped forward, Astra's weight reassuring on her shoulder. "We build something new. Human innovation combined with dragon power, but it requires a level of cooperation our species have never attempted." She gestured, and Astra projected a hologram of her own. The image showed a hybrid warship unlike anything ever conceived. Human engineering merged seamlessly with dragon biotechnology, creating vessels that were part machine, part living creature. "The fusion reactors are replaced with dragon heart cores," Sarah explained, reading from the knowledge flowing through her bond. "Each ship requires a bonded pair, human pilot and dragon partner. The weapon systems channel raw energy through bio-neural networks that amplify power output by orders of magnitude." Admiral Reyes studied the specifications with professional interest. "The energy readings are incredible, but the resource requirements. We'd need to convert our entire industrial base." "Which brings us to the other part of the proposal," Sarah continued. "The dragons have something we need. Raw materials from their home dimension. Metals that exist in folded space, energy crystals that store the power of collapsed stars." Tellurian's mental voice carried weight of millennia. "My people have hidden caches throughout this galaxy, resources gathered over millions of years of exploration. We offer them freely to humanity." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some counselors demanded guarantees that couldn't be given. Others questioned whether humanity was trading one form of destruction for another. Through it all, Astra remained calm on Sarah's shoulder, her large eyes taking in everything with innocent curiosity. Silence. Vasquez's voice cut through the chaos. "We need a demonstration. Something to prove this alliance is more than desperate fantasy." Sarah nodded to Astra, and the dragon child began to sing. The sound was impossible to describe, not heard but felt, resonating through every cell in their bodies. The station's lights dimmed as power was drawn into a growing sphere of energy above Astra's small form. The energy sphere pulsed once and vanished. In its wake, the chamber's metal walls showed subtle changes. Molecular scanners revealed that the basic atomic structure had been altered, creating an alloy that didn't exist in nature. "Transmutation," Sarah explained. "Dragons can manipulate matter at the quantum level. Combined with human manufacturing techniques, we could build materials stronger than anything in our periodic table." Morrison's tactical mind was already working. "How quickly can we begin production?" "That depends." Tellurian's voice carried uncertainty. "On how many of your people are willing to bond with dragons?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Bonding with a dragon meant sharing consciousness with an alien mind, accepting thoughts and memories that spanned centuries. For humans accustomed to mental privacy, it was a terrifying prospect. Sarah felt Astra's sadness through their connection. The child dragon had hoped that her bond with Sarah would be the first of many, but the fear in the chamber was palpable. "I volunteer," Admiral Reyes said suddenly. "If this is humanity's best chance, then I'll take it." "As will I," added Dr. Sarah Kim, the Council's chief science advisor. "The potential for advancement is too great to ignore." One by one, other volunteers stepped forward. Not all the counselors joined them, but enough to begin the program. Sarah felt Astra's joy spike as the dragon child sensed willing minds approaching. "There's something else," Sarah said as the volunteering concluded. "The dragons have been monitoring Void Hunter tactics for millennia. They know weaknesses we haven't discovered." The hologram shifted to show tactical analyses that made human military doctrine look primitive. The Void Hunters had patterns, preferences, exploitable habits developed over billions of years of unopposed conquest. "They consume from the outside in," Thalorian explained. "They always target the strongest defensive positions first, believing that breaking enemy morale is more important than strategic advantage. This predictability can be used against them." Counselor Vasquez studied the data with growing excitement. "They've never faced an enemy that could adapt during combat. Every species they've fought has relied on static defenses." "Exactly," Sarah confirmed. "Humans excel at improvisation. Dragons provide power and ancient knowledge. Together we might actually surprise them." The vote was closer than Sarah had hoped, but it passed. Humanity would forge an alliance with its former enemies, betting everything on a partnership that existed only in theory. As the council session ended, Sarah found herself alone with Astra in an observation deck overlooking Earth. The planet looked peaceful from this distance, its blue oceans unmarked by the scars of war. "Are you frightened?" Sarah asked the dragon child. Astra's response came not in words but in images and emotions. Fear, yes, but also anticipation. Through her genetic memory, she carried the knowledge of her species' greatest achievements. The prospect of combining that legacy with human innovation filled her with something her people had lost long ago: hope for the future. "Whatever happens," Sarah promised, "you won't face it alone." Astra's purr was like distant thunder, and for a moment Sarah almost believed they might actually succeed. Then the emergency klaxons began to sound and Morrison's voice filled the station. "All personnel to battle stations. The Void Hunters have reached Jupiter. ETA to Earth orbit. 18 hours. The time for preparation was over." Now came the test of whether two species who had been enemies could become something greater than either had ever been alone. The fusion of human and dragon technology proceeded with desperate urgency. In the massive orbital shipyards above Earth, something unprecedented was taking shape. The first hybrid warship emerged from its construction bay, like a creature awakening from deep sleep. Sarah stood in the command center of what would become the flagship of humanity's last fleet. The ship's bridge was unlike anything ever built. Organic curves blended seamlessly with angular human design, living crystal displays showing information in ways that bypassed language entirely. Astra had grown again, now the size of a small horse, her scales having developed intricate patterns that pulsed with the ship's energy flow. Through their bond, Sarah could feel the vessel's living components responding to the dragon child's presence. "Neural interface is stable," reported Dr. Kim, her own dragon partner coiled around her shoulders. The small blue-scaled creature named Flux had bonded with her during the rushed pairing ceremonies. "The bio-neural networks are exceeding all projections." Admiral Reyes emerged from the ship's engine room, his massive dragon companion Titan following behind. The Admiral's partner was one of the few adult dragons who had survived the journey to Earth, and their bond had been difficult to establish. "The hardcore is online," Reyes announced. "Power output is incredible. We're generating more energy than our entire previous fleet combined." Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on the tactical display. The Void Hunters had consumed Jupiter in a matter of hours, reducing the giant planet to nothing but empty space. Now they were moving toward the inner system with terrifying purpose. "Status report from the other ships?" she asked. 17 vessels are combat ready." Morrison's voice came through the comm from the surface. "Another dozen will be operational within 6 hours. It's not enough, but it's what we have." Through Astra, Sarah could sense the other dragon partners scattered throughout the fleet. Each bond was unique, some filled with nervous energy, others radiating calm determination. The dragons ranged from ancient warriors like Titan to young adults like Astra, all united in the desperate hope that this alliance might succeed, where their species alone had failed. Incoming transmission from the lead Void Hunter construct, the communications officer announced. It's in perfect English. The main display flickered and something appeared that hurt to look at directly. The image seemed to absorb light while simultaneously being visible, a paradox that made human eyes water and minds recoil. Humans. The voice was like the sound of stars dying. We have observed your alliance with the dragon refugees. It is irrelevant. Your species shows promise, but you have chosen extinction by associating with the marked ones. Sarah stepped forward, Astra's presence giving her strength. We don't accept extinction as an option. Curious. You speak as if you have a choice. The Void Hunter's form shifted, becoming even more difficult to perceive. The dragons told you they fled us, but they did not tell you why they are marked for consumption. Thalorian's mental voice suddenly filled the bridge, carried through Astra's connection. Do not listen to their lies. They twist truth to break spirits before feeding. But the Void Hunter continued. The dragons created us, little human. In their arrogance, they sought to transcend physical existence. Their experiments opened doorways to realms beyond reality. We are what crawled through those doorways. Sarah felt Astra's shock through their bond. The child dragon's genetic memories contained no record of such experiments, but older dragons on other ships were radiating waves of recognition and shame. Impossible. Titan's voice rumbled through Reyes's connection. The ancestors would never. The ancestors were fools, the Void Hunter replied. They thought they could harness entropy itself. Instead, they created predators that feed on existence. We have spent eons tracking down every remnant of their civilization, every trace of their tainted knowledge. Sarah's mind raced. If this was true, then humanity had allied itself with the architects of its own destruction. But as she looked at Astra, seeing the dragon child's innocence and genuine desire to protect Earth, she realized it didn't matter. Even if that's true, Sarah said firmly, it doesn't change anything. These dragons aren't their ancestors. They're refugees who've been running from their people's mistakes. We won't abandon them. Then you will die with them. The transmission cut off abruptly. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of hybrid systems. Sarah could feel the emotional turmoil of every bonded pair in the fleet. Dragons wrestling with inherited guilt. Humans questioning their decision to trust former enemies. It doesn't matter, Admiral Reyes said finally. Whatever the dragon's ancestors did, these Void Hunters are a threat to all life. We fight them regardless, Dr. Kim nodded agreement. The truth is, we need each other now more than ever. Human guilt and dragon shame won't help anyone survive what's coming. Astra pressed against Sarah's mind, sharing not words but pure emotion, loyalty, determination, and love. The dragon child had chosen Earth as her home, humanity as her family. Whatever mistakes her species had made in the distant past, she was committed to making them right. Fleet-wide communication, Sarah ordered. All ships, all crews. When the channel opened, she could see the faces of hundreds of humans and their dragon partners scattered across 17 vessels. Fear was evident, but so was resolve. You all heard what the Void Hunter said. Maybe it's true, maybe it's psychological warfare. It doesn't matter. What matters is that right now, today, we stand between them and Earth. Between them and every innocent life in this system. She paused, feeling Astra's strength flowing through their bond. Our ancestors made mistakes too. We've fought wars over resources, ideology, territory. We've nearly destroyed our own planet multiple times. But we learned to do better. To be better. Through the neural network connecting all the hybrid ships, Sarah could feel a change in the collective mood. Determination replacing despair, unity emerging from doubt. The dragons who stand with us aren't the dragons who opened those doorways. They're refugees, survivors, children who want the same thing we do. A future. Today we fight not as humans or dragons, but as something new. Something these Void Hunters have never faced before. Astra began to sing, her voice carrying through every ship's communication system. Other dragons joined her, creating a harmony that resonated through the fleet's bio-neural networks. The ships themselves began to glow, their hybrid systems responding to the collective will of their crews. All ships, prepare for combat maneuvers, Sarah commanded. Let's show these creatures what happens when predators meet their match. The fleet moved as one organism, 17 vessels dancing through space with impossible grace. Each ship was part machine, part living creature. part expression of the impossible partnership between two species who had found strength in their shared determination to survive. As the Void Hunter constructs approached Earth's orbit, they would find something they had never encountered in billions of years of conquest, an enemy that refused to accept defeat, powered by the combined will of species who had learned that survival meant standing together against the dark. The real battle was about to begin, and for the first time since the Void Hunters had begun their eternal hunt, they would face prey that could fight back with the fury of the desperate and the power of the impossible. The first engagement began at the edge of Earth's gravity well. Sarah watched through the flagship's bioneural displays as the Void Hunter constructs moved with predatory patience. They weren't rushing to attack, they were savoring the anticipation of another easy conquest. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "All ships, implement formation Delta 7, Sarah commanded. Through Astra, she could feel the dragon child's battle instincts awakening, genetic memories of countless conflicts flowing through their shared consciousness. The human fleet spread out in a pattern that looked chaotic to conventional military thinking but followed the ancient dragon tactical philosophy of controlled unpredictability. Each ship moved independently while remaining connected through the bioneural network, creating a combat formation that was part swarm, part orchestra. "Enemy is launching attack drones," reported the sensor officer aboard Admiral Reyes's vessel. "Thousands of them, moving faster than anything we've recorded." The Void Hunter drones were splinters of darkness, each one the size of a fighter craft but composed of the same reality-warping material as their parent constructs. They moved through space like schools of hungry fish, seeking to overwhelm their prey through sheer numbers. "Dragon pairs, initiate harmony protocol," Sarah ordered. What happened next had never been attempted in the history of warfare. Every dragon in the fleet began to sing simultaneously, their voices creating a resonance that turned the bioneural networks into amplifiers. The hybrid ships responded by generating fields of pure energy that didn't just block the incoming drones. They converted the attacking forces into raw power. Impossible. Admiral Reyes breathed as his tactical display showed the drones simply vanishing as they encountered the energy fields. "They're not being destroyed, they're being absorbed." Dr. Kim's voice crackled with excitement. "The harmony is creating a localized reality field. We're not just fighting in space. We're fighting for the fundamental laws of physics themselves." The Void Hunter constructs paused in their advance, and Sarah could sense their confusion through the strange psychic emanations they projected. For the first time in eons, their initial assault had not only failed, but had actually strengthened their opponents. "Now we show them something they've never seen," Sarah said, feeling Astra's predatory joy through their bond. "Fleet attack pattern Omega. Show them what happens when the prey becomes the predator." The human ships moved with fluid grace, each vessel following the instincts of its dragon partner, while guided by human tactical thinking. They struck at the Void Hunter constructs from impossible angles, appearing to teleport from one position to another as their hybrid drives bent space-time around them. The weapons were unlike anything either species had developed alone. Human targeting systems guided beams of dragonfire that burned with the heat of stellar cores. Missiles that phased through normal matter delivered payloads of crystallized reality, forcing the Void Hunter constructs to maintain physical form in order to be damaged. "We're actually hurting them," reported Captain Chen from the destroyer Dragonfly. "Their outer shells are showing damage patterns, but the Void Hunters adapted quickly." The three massive constructs began to merge, their reality-warping fields combining into something that made space itself scream in protest. Where they touched, stars began to flicker and die, their light being drawn into the growing monstrosity. "They're creating a consumption field." Thalorian's mental voice carried ancient terror. "It will devour everything within light years. We must retreat." "No," Sarah said firmly. "We run and they follow us to every world humanity has ever touched. This ends here." Through Astra, she reached out to every dragon in the fleet, feeling their fear but also their determination. The child dragon's innocence had touched them all, reminding them of what they were fighting to protect. "Formation Nova," Sarah commanded. "All ships, maximum harmony." The fleet condensed into a tight formation, their bioneural networks linking so completely that the boundary between individual ships began to blur. 17 vessels became one organism, powered by the combined will of hundreds of humans and dragons working in perfect synchronization. The energy output was staggering. Earth's orbital sensors registered power levels equivalent to a small star, all of it focused through the fleet's hybrid weapon systems. But more than energy, they were generating something the Void Hunters had never encountered: coordinated hope. The merged construct launched tendrils of pure entropy at the human fleet, attacks that should have unmade them at the atomic level. Instead, the harmony field converted the incoming destruction into raw potential, feeding it back through the bio-neural networks to make the ships even stronger. "We're not just fighting them," Dr. Kim realized. "We're teaching the universe how to fight back." Sarah felt the truth of those words through her connection with Astra. The Void Hunters were parasites that fed on despair and destruction. But the Human-Dragon Alliance represented something new, a symbiosis that created rather than consumed, that grew stronger through cooperation rather than conquest. The flagship's main weapon charged with the power of a collapsing star. But instead of firing conventional energy, it released something unprecedented. A beam of pure creation, matter and energy woven together by the combined will of two species who refused to surrender. The beam struck the merged Void Hunter construct, and something impossible happened. Instead of being absorbed or deflected, the attack began to transform the enemy. Reality reasserted itself around the construct, forcing it back into normal space-time where the laws of physics could take hold. "It's working," Admiral Reyes shouted. "They're becoming vulnerable to conventional attack." The fleet pressed their advantage, pouring everything they had into the stabilized construct. Dragonfire and human weapons worked together, carving through armor that had been invulnerable for billions of years. For the first time, a Void Hunter was truly threatened, but victory came at a cost. The harmony was draining both species beyond their limits. Several human pilots collapsed at their stations, and younger dragons began to falter as the energy demands exceeded their capacity. "We can't maintain this much longer," Dr. Kim warned. Sarah felt Astra's determination through their bond. The dragon child was barely holding on, her small form glowing with barely contained energy, but she wasn't giving up. Through their connection, Sarah sensed something that changed everything. Astra wasn't just channeling power, she was learning. The child dragon was absorbing the patterns of the battle, understanding how the harmony worked, how creation could triumph over consumption. "Astra has an idea," Sarah announced. "She wants to try something no dragon has ever attempted." "What?" Admiral Reyes asked. Sarah smiled, feeling the dragon child's innocent confidence. "She wants to sing them a lullaby." Before anyone could object, Astra began a new song. This one was different from the battle harmony, softer, sadder, filled with the longing of a child who had lost everything but still believed in better tomorrows. The effect on the Void Hunter construct was immediate and devastating. The creature that had consumed countless civilizations suddenly stopped its attacks, its reality-warping fields fluctuating as if confused. Through the bio-neural network, Sarah felt what Astra was doing. The dragon child was reminding the Void Hunters of what they had been before becoming monsters. She was singing to the buried remnants of the dragon civilization that had created them, calling to whatever spark of their original nature might still exist. The massive construct began to change, its dark matter taking on new patterns. For just a moment, Sarah thought she saw something beautiful in its structure, the ghost of the ancient dragon civilization that had tried to transcend reality and instead unleashed nightmare. Then the construct simply stopped. Its attacks ceased, its consumption fields dissipated, and it hung motionless in space like a mountain-sized monument to regret. The other two constructs retreated, fleeing toward the outer system as if afraid of what they had witnessed. For the first time in eons, the Void Hunters had encountered something that not only defeated them, but offered the possibility of redemption. As the immediate threat passed, Sarah held the exhausted Astra close, feeling the dragon child's profound satisfaction. They had won more than a battle. They had proven that cooperation could triumph over consumption, that creation was stronger than destruction. But the war was far from over, and the real test of their alliance was yet to come. The paralyzed Void Hunter construct floated in Earth's orbit like a dark moon, its massive form no longer radiating the reality-warping fields that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. Inside its biomechanical structure, Something unprecedented was happening. Sarah stood in the newly constructed observation deck of the orbital research station, watching teams of human scientists and dragons work together to understand what Astra had accomplished. The dragon child, now grown to the size of a small spacecraft, rested nearby, her scales dimmed with exhaustion but her eyes bright with curiosity. "The neural patterns are stabilizing," Dr. Kim reported, her dragon partner Flux displaying holographic data streams. "Whatever consciousness existed within the construct before it became a void hunter is beginning to reassert itself." Through her bond with Astra, Sarah could feel echoes of the ancient mind awakening within the massive structure. It was alien beyond description, but there was something familiar in its patterns, the same harmonies that resonated through dragon songs. Corrupted and twisted but recognizably kin. Admiral Reyes joined them. Titan's massive form coiled around the station's central support. "The other two constructs have retreated beyond the heliopause, but they're not leaving the system. Our long-range sensors show them waiting." "Waiting for what?" Sarah asked. Thalorian's mental voice, now permanently linked to the bio-neural network, carried ancient knowledge. "They wait to see if their brother construct can be truly redeemed, or if it will become something they must destroy." The implications were staggering. If they could successfully restore the consciousness within one void hunter, it might be possible to cure them all. But failure could trigger a response that would make their previous attacks look like gentle probes. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with a data pad. "We're receiving a transmission from the construct. It's asking for Astra specifically." Sarah felt the dragon child's excitement through their bond. Astra had been monitoring the awakening consciousness from the moment it began showing signs of recovery, her innocent curiosity drawing her to this ancient, wounded mind like a child to an injured animal. "Patch it through," Sarah ordered. The main display flickered, and instead of the reality-warping darkness they expected, a face appeared. It was clearly draconian in origin, but transformed by eons of exposure to forces beyond normal existence. Where scales should have been, there were patterns of crystallized spacetime. Where eyes should have been, there were windows into distant galaxies. "Little Singer." The voice was like distant thunder, but gentle in a way no void hunter had ever been. "You called to me across the void of forgetting. I remember now. I remember what I was before the hunger." Astra chirped softly and projected her own hologram, not words but pure emotion. Compassion, hope, the unconditional love of a child who saw past the monster to the wounded soul beneath. "I was called Nexian once," the ancient being continued. "I was a researcher, a seeker of knowledge. My people wanted to touch the face of creation itself. We opened doorways that should have remained closed." Sarah stepped forward. "You don't have to carry that burden alone anymore. We're offering you a chance to make things right." The ancient dragon's transformed features shifted, and Sarah realized it was trying to smile. "Humans, you're even more remarkable than the refugees told us. You offer redemption to creatures who have devoured worlds. Because everyone deserves a chance to change," Astra projected, her message clear despite her young age. Nexian's attention focused on the dragon child with something approaching wonder. "You are the future they spoke of. The generation that would heal the wounds our arrogance opened." Through the bio-neural network, Sarah felt a ripple of recognition from the other dragons in the fleet. Ancient genetic memories were stirring, fragments of half-forgotten legends about a child who would bridge the gap between what dragons had been and what they could become. "The others approach," Nexion warned, his massive sensor arrays detecting movement at the system's edge. "My brother constructs do not believe redemption is possible. They come to eliminate what they see as contamination." Sarah's tactical mind began working immediately. "How many?" "All of them," Nexion replied with quiet despair. "Every void hunter in the galaxy. They have abandoned their hunting patterns to converge on this system. They cannot allow the possibility of hope to spread." The number was incomprehensible. Thousands of constructs, each one capable of consuming entire star systems, all heading toward Earth. The small human fleet, even with their dragon allies, couldn't possibly stand against such overwhelming force. "There is another way." Thalorian's mental voice carried desperate inspiration. "But it requires a risk beyond anything we have attempted." "What kind of risk?" Admiral Reyes asked. "We must awaken the deep harmony," the ancient dragon explained. the original resonance that connected all draconian consciousness before the division between physical and void realms. If we can re-establish that connection, we could potentially reach every void hunter simultaneously, Dr. Kim finished, her scientific mind grasping the implications. Sing to them all at once the way Astra sang to Nexion. Sarah felt Astra's excitement spike through their bond, but also her fear. The dragon child instinctively understood the magnitude of what was being proposed. To reach every void hunter in the galaxy would require power beyond imagination, and the strain might destroy every participant. The risk is not just to ourselves, Nexion warned. If we fail, if the harmony is corrupted by their hunger, we could inadvertently create something even worse than the void hunters. What could be worse than the void hunters? Sarah asked. A universe where hope itself becomes impossible, Nexion replied, where the very concept of creation is eaten away, leaving only eternal consumption. The weight of the decision pressed down on everyone present. They could attempt the deep harmony and risk everything on the possibility of galactic redemption, or they could evacuate what they could and try to outrun an enemy that had never been successfully evaded. Astra pressed against Sarah's mind, sharing not arguments, but pure feeling. The dragon child had touched the wounded consciousness within Nexion and felt the echo of what the void hunters had once been. She believed, with the absolute certainty of innocence, that they could all be saved. How long do we have? Sarah asked. The vanguard will arrive within 6 hours, Nexion calculated. The main force within 18. If we are to attempt the deep harmony, we must begin immediately. Sarah looked around the observation deck at the faces of humans and dragons, who had already risked everything for this alliance. They were exhausted, pushed beyond their limits, but she could see determination in their eyes. Dr. Kim, what do you need to set up the harmonic resonance? Every dragon in the system, all linked through the bio-neural network. The hybrid ships will serve as amplification nodes, but we'll need to position them in precise formation around Earth and the construct. Admiral Reyes, can the fleet handle that kind of energy throughput? If we don't burn out every system we have, it'll be a miracle. But if the alternative is extinction, he shrugged. The ships were built for this kind of impossible mission. Sarah felt Astra's confidence flowing through their bond, the dragon child's absolute faith that love could triumph over hunger, that creation could heal the wounds of destruction. It was naive, perhaps, but it was also the only hope they had. All right, Sarah decided. We attempt the deep harmony. If we're going to bet everything on the impossible, we might as well do it properly. As the fleet began to move into position and dragons throughout the system prepared for the greatest song their species had ever attempted, Sarah couldn't help but think that this moment would either mark the beginning of a new age or the end of everything they held dear. Either way, they would face it together. The deep harmony began with a single note from Astra, pure and sweet as the first song ever sung. From her position aboard the flagship, the dragon child's voice reached out through the bio-neural network, touching every dragon in the system and beyond. Sarah felt the resonance building through their bond, a vibration that went deeper than sound, deeper than thought. It was the fundamental frequency of existence itself, the rhythm that had driven evolution from the first spark of life to the complexity of consciousness. One by one, the other dragons joined the song. Thalorian's ancient bass harmonized with Flux's crystalline soprano. Titan's rumbling baritone blended with the voices of a dozen younger dragons scattered throughout the fleet. Even Nexion, his transformed consciousness still fragile from its awakening, added his voice to the growing chorus. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Space itself began to resonate, quantum fields fluctuating in rhythm with the harmony. The hybrid ships became living instruments, their bio-neural networks amplifying and shaping the song until it could be heard across the galaxy. Energy readings are off the charts, Dr. Kim reported, her voice tight with awe and terror. We're generating output equivalent to a galactic core. Through the observation windows, Sarah could see the effect spreading outward from Earth like ripples in a cosmic pond. Stars flickered in time with the harmony, and nebulae swirled in patterns that spoke of ancient memory and forgotten purpose. But the true test came when the song reached the approaching void hunters. The vanguard constructs, still hours away from Earth, suddenly stopped their advance. Through long-range sensors, the human fleet watched as the reality-warping creatures began to change. Their dark matter shells flickered with patterns of light, and their consumption fields wavered as if struggling against an irresistible tide. "It's working," Admiral Reyes breathed. "They're responding to the harmony." But Sarah could feel through Astra that the process was far from simple. Each Void Hunter was a battlefield where ancient dragon consciousness fought against eons of hunger and madness. Some were winning that battle, their original personalities beginning to resurface. Others were resisting, their transformation into consuming darkness too, complete to easily reverse. The real challenge came when the main force arrived, thousands. A Void Hunter constructs dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, a fleet of nightmares that had devoured civilizations beyond counting. They moved with coordinated precision, surrounding Earth's position and preparing to overwhelm any resistance. Through sheer numbers, then the deep harmony reached them. The effect was like watching a storm front break against an immovable mountain. Wave after wave of song crashed over the Void Hunter fleet, each note carrying the weight of compassion, the power of hope, the unbreakable bonds between species who had chosen cooperation over conquest. Sarah felt Astra straining through their bond, the dragon child pouring everything she had into the song. Around them, other dragons were beginning to falter, their bodies pushed beyond endurance by the effort required to reach so many corrupted minds simultaneously. "We're losing cohesion," Dr. Kim warned. "Several of the younger dragons are approaching neural collapse." But just as the harmony began to weaken, something unexpected happened. Human voices joined the song. It started with Sarah, her untrained but determined voice adding a new harmonic to Astra's melody. Then Rodriguez remembering childhood lullabies his grandmother had sung. Dr. Kim began humming along with flukes, their minds so closely linked that her human consciousness could follow the dragon thought patterns. Throughout the fleet, throughout Earth's orbital stations and surface cities, humans began to sing. They didn't understand the words, couldn't grasp the full complexity of the draconian harmonics, but they understood the emotion behind them. They sang for their children, for their world, for the impossible partnership that had given them a chance against the void. The harmony changed, becoming something neither species had ever achieved alone. Dragon power and human innovation, ancient wisdom and youthful determination, individual voices joining to create something greater than the sum of their parts. And across the galaxy, the Void Hunters began to remember who they had been. One by one, the massive constructs stopped their attack patterns. The reality-warping fields that had terrorized countless worlds began to stabilize, revealing the biomechanical architecture beneath. Where once there had been creatures of pure consumption, now there were minds struggling to recall their original purposes. "Sister, brother, I remember now." The voice came from the nearest construct, its words carrying across space with wonder and pain. "We were explorers once, seekers of truth. How did we become this?" Nexian's voice, strong now with restored purpose, answered through the network. "We lost our way in the spaces between realities, but the path home still exists. The little singer has shown us that redemption is possible." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she witnessed the transformation spreading across the galaxy. Through Astra's enhanced senses, she could perceive the moment when each Void Hunter remembered love, remembered hope, remembered what it meant to create rather than consume. But the process was not without cost. Several of the constructs, too far gone in their transformation, fought against the harmony with desperate fury. Their death screams echoed across space as they chose destruction over the possibility of redemption, unable to accept what they had become. The lost ones. Thalorian's mental voice carried infinite sadness. Not all can be saved. Some wounds cut too deep for healing. As the last echoes of the deep harmony faded, Sarah looked out at a transformed galaxy. Where once there had been an unstoppable force of destruction, now there was a collection of ancient minds working to understand how they might atone for eons of devastation. Astra collapsed in Sarah's arms, exhausted but radiant with joy. Through their bond, Sarah felt the dragon child's deep satisfaction. She had done what her genetic memories had always whispered was possible. She had reunited the scattered fragments of dragon consciousness and shown them a path toward healing. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, looking at the screen showing thousands of former Void Hunters beginning to organize themselves into something resembling their original civilization. "Now we rebuild," Nexion answered, his massive form already beginning the process of transformation that would return him to something closer to his original shape. Your species and mine, working together to heal the wounds we have inflicted on the universe. Admiral Reyes nodded slowly. It won't be easy. There are entire sectors that have been stripped bare, civilizations that need to be rebuilt from scratch. But we have something now that neither species possessed alone, Dr. Kim added, stroking Flux's scales as the little dragon purred with contentment. We have proof that cooperation is stronger than conquest, that love can triumph over hunger. Sarah looked down at Astra, who had begun to sing softly. Not the cosmic song that had transformed the galaxy, but a simple lullaby of contentment and hope. The dragon child had kept her promise, faced humanity as dragon's last opponent, and emerged as something far greater, the bridge between species, the healer of ancient wounds, the living proof that even the darkest transformation could be reversed through the power of innocent hope. As Earth's sun set behind them, painting the orbital station in shades of gold and crimson, Sarah realized that this was not an ending but a beginning. The war between humans and dragons was over. The threat of the Void Hunters had been transformed into an opportunity for redemption, and the galaxy stretched before them full of possibility. Together, they would build something unprecedented, a civilization based not on dominance but on harmony, not on conquest but on cooperation. And at its heart would always be the memory of a small dragon child, whose song had reminded the universe that love was stronger than hunger, that creation could triumph over destruction, and that even the most impossible dreams could come true when different species chose to stand together against the dark. The last dragon child had faced humanity as the dragon's final opponent and emerged as their greatest ally. Now, holding her close as she sang of better tomorrows, Sarah knew that the future belonged to all of them.